Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome. This is Business Africa. I am Jerry Fisaya Bambi. Coming up on the program, sluggish trend for African-owned non-essential businesses in New York, the United States, after 3 months of resumption of activities coming from a COVID-enforced lockdown. New report articulates recovery stimulus for resilient economies in Sub-Saharan Africa. Plus, a Tunisian startup develops 3D printed bionic hand at a price which is a fraction of imported ones in the country. All of this on the program in just a moment. Now, since the economic fallout of COVID, Sub-Saharan Africa got pushed into its first recession in 25 years. While stimulus packages are being shaped to help the region build back stronger, energy challenges are one of the common features of current disruptions in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. A new report now suggests actionable interventions to guide the continent to a recovery.
Hurt by the coronavirus pandemic, growth in Sub-Saharan Africa is predicted to fall to negative 3.3% in 2020, pushing the region into its first recession in 25 years. A World Bank report titled Africa Pulse says the pandemic could also drive up to 40 million people into extreme poverty in Africa in 2020, wiping away at least 5 years of progress in fighting poverty. With over 1 million reported COVID-19 cases on the continent, the pandemic is still not under control. The decline in growth has been stronger among mineral exporters, where GDP is expected to contract by 6%. Among oil exporters, after expanding 1.5% in 2019, GDP is projected to fall by more than 4% in 2020, owing to contractions in Angola and Nigeria. The report notes that the road to recovery will require massive investment across countries, as well as international support. It also recommends a bold reform agenda, something the Rocky Mountain Institute has described as the Africa Stimulus Strategy in a new 6-action point report. Although Africa has registered comparatively lower COVID-19 cases and fatalities than other regions, analysts fear that the impact on the continent could quickly turn into a social and economic emergency if actionable strategies are not put in place by governments on the continent.
Francis Elisha now joins us from the Rocky Mountain Institute to tell us more. Welcome to the program, Francis.
And thank you for having me. Good morning, everyone.
The collapse in the price of oil has had a destabilizing effect in Africa for some countries. What do you mean when you say Africa's stimulus strategy to address this?
Well, in fact, Jerry, you've outlined it pretty well. We are at crossroad for the African continent. We believe this very critical year is the opportunity to reset the economic engine and open new opportunities for African countries to actually, through the stimulus recovery packages that are being deployed, to trigger domestic growth, local growth, by a strong focus on energy aspect. And this can be done by addressing the needs of the most vulnerable. And that's a strong point the Rocky Mountain Institute is emphasizing on the latest report. Just to give you an example, for instance, as you are investing in healthcare facilities, you are actually getting to a stage where you are reigniting the economic engine, because investment in healthcare are actually addressing both the pandemic, but also the confidence in the economy.
Elisha, you say that energy challenges are one of the most common features of the disruptions in the economy of sub-Saharan African countries in the wake of COVID. Could you tell us more about this?
We all know that energy is critical to economic development, but one lesson we've learned throughout this crisis is also that energy is just critical to our very existence on the continent. And we lack it. And we are advocating for strong investment, a strong double down on investment from governments to actually resolve that crisis, I would say. The very important point to take away from that report is that at the moment, there is an opportunity to join forces, talking about government, development partners, but also domestic finance and local private sector. So a momentum that we are describing and calling for.
On a final note, how serious is the situation, the economic situation, and are there reasons to be concerned about a recession in 2021?
We are now projecting, according to the IMF, a contraction of GDP in average around 3.2% for African countries. That's roughly about the double of what had been expected back in April this very year. So things are getting worse. Action is required. In addition to that, there are other risks that are tying up. I'm thinking about the low-cost invasion in Ethiopia, for instance. So food security is also at stake. And we do believe that energy can have spillover benefits effect on most of the sector, using renewable energy for agricultural transformation, using energy efficiency to reduce bills of most SMEs, investing heavily in renewable energy for the utilities, and providing options really for African households to be able to use that energy we critically need, really.
Francis, I'd like to thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us and your insights.
Thank you, Jerry, for having me.
Now, more than 2,800 businesses in New York City, the United States, have permanently closed since March 1, according to data from Yelp, the business listing and review site. When the pandemic eventually subsides, roughly 1/3 of the city's 240,000 small businesses may never reopen. Africans own some of those businesses and are already being affected.
Nearly 3 months after businesses in New York reopened after a statewide shutdown in March, many are yet to go back to pre-pandemic levels. Restaurants, barber shops and malls, among others, are still required to regulate the number of customers that visit their premises. Matthew Zigpo operates a barber shop in the Bronx. He says prior to the shutdown, there was a total of 12 barbers and hairdressers at the shop. Since reopening 2 months ago, only 5 have returned.
When we came back after COVID, he lost almost about 7 workers. And all these 7 workers, they pay rent weekly for him to also pay his bills. And all of them are gone, so he's really, really struggling.
The African market is the go-to hub for Africans living in New York as it stocks various products from the different parts of Africa. The store remained open through the lockdown, but is still struggling to go back to pre-pandemic sales.
I'm just more surprised and happy of seeing the older customers that are coming back, like customers in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. They were kind of scared to come to the stores, but now that things are a little bit better, I'm starting to see them, and business is starting to pick up a little bit, but not as much as pre-COVID.
The state has recently seen a surge in coronavirus cases, prompting an order for non-essential businesses to shut down again. A further blow to African businesses already struggling to recover.
With coronavirus cases surging across the U.S., the business owners I've spoken to say they hope the measures they've put in place, including social distancing, will be enough to keep them in business. From the Bronx in New York, Niakrofi Smatabe for Africanews.
The 3D printing of rudimentary prostheses started about a decade ago and is becoming standard. A Tunisian startup has now developed a 3D printed bionic hand, hoping the affordable and solar-powered prosthetic will help amputees and other disabled people across Africa.
A 3D printed solar-powered and affordable bionic hand to help amputees and other people with physical disabilities across Africa is being developed by a Tunisian startup, Cure Bionics, founded by CEO Mohamed Daoufi and launched in 2017. The customizable bionic hand is made of Lego block-like parts. Compared to what exists on the market, the prosthetics we are developing are much smarter because we are trying to integrate machine learning into our algorithm to facilitate the recognition of the user's muscle signals. It is also lighter because it is customizable 3D printing. The 28-year-old designed his first prototype as an engineering student and started his high-tech company while still living at his parents' house, and not without difficulty, as he chose to persevere to realize his passion on Tunisian soil. There are plenty of challenges, administrative challenges. There are legal challenges like the certifications that we need in our profession. There is the question of access to financing, especially in the medical sector and hardware. There is also the aspect of the import of the components and online payment. There is no way to pay online. It is these kinds of problems that we find every day in our adventure. I decided to stay in Tunisia and develop, so Bionics became a leader because it is a personal challenge. It's more than a personal challenge because there are thousands of people around the world who need what we develop here. Cure Bionics hopes to market its first bionic hands within a few months, first in Tunisia and then elsewhere in Africa.
And that wraps it up on this episode of Business Africa. I am Jerry Fisaya Bambi. Thank you for watching and see you some other time.